Hello, my friends. Welcome to episode 159 of the Nope Coach podcast, Being Offended. I'm your host, Suzanne Kohlberg, and this topic may or may not open up a can of worms. Let's see where we go. There is a glut. Is that the right word? An excess of people on social media who take to being offended. I'm offended by this. I'm offended by that. And as a result, it can make it like you're almost walking on eggshells when it comes to sharing something. Like there's that meme that's going around that says, I like pineapples. And someone's commented as like, so what you're saying is that you hate mangoes and oranges and apples. And then the whole conversation devolves from there. And it's almost like some people light up, become enlivened by being offended, or they look around for things to be offended by. And I just want to really highlight that offense can never be given, only taken. If we are all different individuals, and thank goodness for that, because how boring would the world be if we were all exactly the same? And it never ceases to amaze me when someone says, you offended me. And it's like, I offended you how? Simply by being me. You took offense to what I shared. I didn't overtly go out to offend you. One of the things that's common thing for this is language. I will own I am a sweary fairy. Every single one of my episodes of podcast is marked as explicit. Every single one of them. I don't even swear on all of them, but I just mark them all that way, just so it's covered. That's the way that I am. It's my nature. I drop the words here and there. And I cannot tell you the number of times that I have received a message or a comment or an email. I would listen to you if only you didn't swear. I wish that you had a bigger vocabulary. You're such a nice person. Can you not say this so much, etc., etc. The thing is, you wouldn't be listening to me then, would you? You'd be listening to an ideal version of me. And also, if it comes to being offended, I'd love to hear their response if I said, well, I'm offended by the fact that you're offended. Can you imagine how that would unfold? But we don't get to go around telling people how they should be. This is a boundary thing. This is my show. This is the way that I speak. If you don't enjoy it, don't tune in. No one's forcing you to listen. I at least hope not. I have this image in my mind now of a torture chamber where the person's locked up and Suzanne's on play and with all my shit and fuck and, bitch bombs, and you're like, ah! Like, I really seriously doubt that that's actually happening, but now that I feel almost comedic and terrible because I'm laughing at that because I'm amused by it, which is probably offending the people who are offended. So all that to say is, for me, it's something I question myself on. Sometimes if I'm in a pissy mood and I deliberately go to a Facebook page or a website or a resource that I know that I don't agree with the person, so I can get even more riled up and then I can blame my pissy mood on them, that's on me. Very recently, and I actually do this every 6 months or so, I do a deliberate unfollow, unsubscribe, leave groups. I do a practice where I basically recall all of my energy. And I do this when I notice that my Facebook scroll or my Instagram feed, there's lots of things on there that don't feel aligned to my values and what I enjoy and where I'm going. That does not mean I go and comment on those people's posts and tell them what I think they should post. No, no, no. What I do instead is I remove myself from the situation. I unfollow, I unfriend, I leave the groups. And then I notice how much lighter I feel immediately following. And the thing is, we don't all have to agree 100% of the time to respect and trust and have value in the other person. Some of my best friends in the world, we have very different opinions on things like, the big things, politics, religion, vaccination, the stuff that you don't tend to discuss because they like, well, if you want to see I'm offended comments, post any of these things. I don't need to have people agree with me 100% of the time, or I agree with them 100% of the time, to see and value that that's the way that they feel. And it's different to the way that I feel, and it's okay. It's when we have to get convincing, or when we're like, if you think this, then how can you? Like, that can cause so much disruption. And it's worth looking at. And I notice it in myself too. When we put ourselves in situations where we know that we're not going to agree with the status quo, and then try and tell the status quo that it shouldn't be like that. For example, like just a mundane example, I'm a non-smoker. My house is non-smoking. So people who smoke are most welcome to visit, but they can't smoke inside my house. That is a boundary that I set. If I then go and visit a friend who is a smoker, I don't feel that I can tell them not to smoke in their own house. I choose whether or not to enter it. And I don't stand outside telling them that I'm offended because they're smoking in their own house. So when people say to me they're offended that I swear on my own show, if I went to their wall, or if I went to their show, like I'm a guest on a lot of podcasts, most of the time, 99% of the time, before we hit record, I ask, hey, can I swear on your show? And sometimes when I forget to ask, I was just recording as a guest this morning, and I said, I help people, because she said, what do you do? Set boundaries without being mean. I said, I didn't ask if I could swear on your show. And she said, sure. I said, well, without feeling like a bitch. But, it's up to me to ask what is allowable and not allowable in this space that I am choosing to enter. Not saying, well, this is how I am and you asked me to be on your show, so you change everything. So all of this to say, when we feel offended, it's worth the gut check. Like, this is something that I do. Like, was I feeling pissy anyway, and I deliberately chose to come to a place where I could justify my feeling of offense and take it away from me and put it onto someone else? It often happens to me if I'm having a mum guilt moment. Like, if I've not handled something really well, or I've yelled at my kids, or I've done something, then I notice that I'll go to places or whatever that kind of annoy me, so then I can externalize that and be all annoyed at that, because it's easier to judge others than it is to judge myself. Something to be mindful of. And when I catch myself doing that, then it's my work to work through that, not to tell them, don't smoke in your own house, don't swear on your own show, don't whatever, like this offends me, because I am choosing this. I am taking offense. It's not being given to me. Something to be just, to really sit with and really think, because so much things I think could be avoided or worked through if we owned our part in it. And also if we asked a question, like, what did you mean by that? Because sometimes it's just, when someone says something, we took it to mean this, and they actually meant something else entirely. So a simple question of, what do you mean by that? Or what does that mean? Or can you tell me more? Rather than, I'm offended, and starting a whole discussion. Have you ever had, I know I have, had an argument with someone only to find out you both were actually agreeing, but you thought they meant one thing and they thought you meant another thing, and you're having a whole disagreement and taking offense when you both were actually on the same page? It happens. So my advice for you, or my takeaway from this, or something I remind myself all the time when I'm feeling offended, because we all do, that offense can never be given, only taken. And just always realizing that people are doing the best they can with what they have. And they're not out to get me as such. That's some weird conspiracy theory shit that I'm just unavailable for. Most times people are preoccupied, they don't notice or they don't realize. And when we have these open discussions, like, what did you mean by that? Or even saying, when you say this, I take it to mean, or this is how I feel. People can be like, oh my goodness, I had no idea. And this can become such a healing space for a conversation to move through things, rather than, I'm offended when you. Ooh. Anyway, love to hear what's your what happens for you with offense? Like, what do you do when you feel offended? Do you bring it up and say, do you stew on it? Do you ask questions? How do you go when, people, especially people close to you, are vehemently disagreeing with you on important topics? Do you find a way that you can move through it, or is that like the end of the friendship or the relationship? Yeah, love to know. Thanks for tuning in. Catch you on the next one. Bye for now.